but more business perspective.
And I was part of process when the sales conference was launched. I was sort of moderating the conference at Circus years back, right? And we had
What's it called?
The sales conference. So imagine the sales conference. So imagine you have an industry conference for sales and marketing people, for sales and marketing leaders. Like the Data Innovation Summit is an industry conference for data and AI practitioners and leaders. And here we have sales and marketing practitioners and leaders. And the core topic then is sales, marketing. And now, of course, the core theme of this year of the sales conference was AI in sales and marketing and how that will change and transform the organization, the industry, et cetera. And what we talked about, when we were reflecting at the end of the conference or in the middle of the conference is like the need for proper practitioners conferences, like data and AI conferences for data AI people, and then of course sales and marketing practitioners conferences. The challenging part has been, where do they meet or how do you bridge that? Because you get to a point sometimes where you get too lightweight on the data and AI topics in the sales and marketing conference, and you get too detached from the core business problem in the other one.
Which is not only a conference problem, I think it's an organizational problem. It's exactly how the reality looks as well.
And the reality is simply we are selling to different user personas or target audiences, and we need to figure this out. Yeah. I've been pitching and toying with the idea, how do we do a business entrepreneur, how do we do a data and AI conference for business people? Yeah. So not a sales and marketing conference, but a data and AI conference, a little bit closer now to but it's not for the normal practitioners, but it's for the users and buyers, the people who need to adopt and change in terms of their operations.
Yeah, and of course we run the conference that we call Avaus Expert Talks, which is on data and AI in marketing and sales, because that's what we do. Yeah. So it's sort of a natural group of people and us as a collecting or as an organizer, but the same would be needed in HR and in legal and in logistics and everywhere.
Any highlights from that conference? Was it back in February?
In February, 13th of February.
Did you give the talk as well? Or?
I did, being super pregnant. we normally run our conference in May, and now sort of last fall I had to sort of with the power vested in me.
It was your fault that was had in February.
Exactly, I had to sort of this year we're gonna do February. I think it's better to go early than late, knowing that I will not be able to take part if it's any later because I then
Emma, you had influence here.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
So for people that don't realize, I mean, this is actually one of the first times you have a proper after work since you had a kid recently.
Yes.
And you're on parental leave now.
Yeah, she's 10 weeks old.
10 weeks.
And this is the third time I'm out without a stroller in the street, so I'm super excited
and the real
to be
reason
invited
is because you have beers and after work, I'm there.
And I get to talk about these interesting topics that I love. What could be better?
What did you speak about at the conference, by the way?
Well, my topic was sort of how business leaders should get started, using sort of a analogy of standing in the middle of the woods and not knowing sort of multiple paths everywhere. You could go sort of, every path looks quite interesting.
It's like taking the first step into the world of AI in some way.
Sort of, yeah. And then also focusing quite a lot on sort of what happens if you're standing in the middle of the forest and you are lost, you don't know what to do. A very natural thing that people have done for thousands of years is then you make a camp and then you stay there and you make a fire and then you're sort of cozy, and then the closer you get to the fire, the less of the dark you see. But in this sort of AI transformation that we're living in, as a business leader, you sort of have to also start finding that path, because if you don't,
you need to break the old camp sometime.
Yeah, exactly, and it might feel scary and it might feel safer to stay on.
As a topic, I think how do you take the first steps into the world of AI?
Yeah,
could be
sure.
An interesting topic.
That's a great topic.
If we manage to
but I mean, like I was there at the conference. I mean, like, so it's interesting then, because I'm the chairman of the Data Innovation Summit, and we had that conference a couple of weeks back. And I was actually working at ProSales back in the days. I was actually part of the instigators doing this. I think I was involved in the second sales conference. The first one ever done was when we released the sales effectiveness study. It was like a big benchmarking study that was commissioned and invested in by a lot of the large enterprises in Sweden that has B2B sales. So it's very much B2B. And Henrik Larsson Broman was heading up Process Institute. Mikael Klingvall, who is working with me in Derdax, was the guy who wrote the report and wrote the book. So it's interesting. So there's a lot of connection here. So when Henrik invited me, you should come to the sales conference now this year. I said, I need to go. And I had really, because the AI topic was on the agenda, I took the point, okay, let's see how we discuss AI in a marketing and sales conference versus how we discuss data and AI in a hardcore data and AI practitioners conference. What is the difference in discussion, conversation, the level of the talks in terms of how techy they are or how fluffy they are?
Yeah.
And it's very, very interesting how, these are two worlds that in the end needs to meet in the middle.
Absolutely. Just like they need to meet in the middle in organizations,
in reality.
In the everyday life.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, with that, very welcome here, Emma Storbacka.
Thank you.
And I learned a great tip in how to actually pronounce the company name here as well. So I hope I don't fail here. But you're also the CEO of Avaus.
Correct.
Oh, yes. But in short, it's Nordic consultancy in data and AI, right? And you work with marketing, sales, and service leaders in the industry, right?
Basically, sort of any company that has customer data and is interfacing with their customers. Need to do that more data-driven, and that's where we are.
So it's like data and AI with a strong niche focus on the customer coast, the customer
interface,
interface. So sales, marketing,
and service.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. But who is really Emma? Could you give a quick background? Who's really what's the background, the passion? What led you into the work you do today?
Well, if you start really, really sort of long ago, I think what defines me absolutely most is that I'm a scout, and I've always been a very sort of passionate scout leader.
Are you still active in that?
I am actually. I just got active again with my bonus kid. So I'm not right now because I'm on maternity leave, but I host I lead scout meetings once a week, and that's great fun. Yeah. And I even have a tattoo that I took last year, which says var redo in Morse code.
This was Morse code for var redo.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that's pretty scout motto. Yeah. So I think that's what defines me the most, and I've been holding leadership positions since I was 13, but in a very small scale, and then from there on, always been sort of passionate about leading projects and organizations. And then when I graduated, I started at Capgemini because I wanted to be a consultant, but that was a very big organization and sort of.
How many employees does Capgemini have?
I think at the time they had like 40,000 maybe, but I'm sure it's a lot more today.
It's a lot more today, I think.
So I stayed there for a few years and got my sort of basic consultancy 101 education, but felt that maybe a big corporation like that is not my place. But already there, the thing that was great with such a big place was, at the time, social media was a new and upcoming thing, and we had a Yammer account, and through that Yammer account, I think I was the only person in the Finnish organization who actually used it, but I got a lot of connections with other sort of digital transformation enthusiasts in the sort of larger Capgemini field, and that was the thing that I really appreciated. Nice. But then when I found a company that was focusing on digital transformation consultancy, but in a much smaller and more entrepreneurial scale, which was Avaus, then I actually emailed the owners and said, "Hi, I think I need to work here."
That's an interesting approach.
That's where I ended up.
Tell us that story. So, how do you get a new job? It's like you used a small sidetrack. Just an email out from the blue,
apparently,
or any
12 years ago, that was the way that you did it.
Worked.
I haven't applied for any new jobs since that, so I don't know how you get a job these days.
Awesome. And then you worked there for 12 years, and now you're the CEO. How did that come about?
Well, I did sort of very normal projects for the couple of first years. Then I felt that I needed a bigger challenge, and I was then sent to Sweden to set up our Swedish office.
From Finland? From Finland,
so I was sort of the first.
So Avaus is Finnish.
Avaus is a Finnish company, yes. Yeah. Our headquarters are in Finland, and I'm Finnish by origin. So then I moved to Sweden, and we grew here in Stockholm. We did an acquisition of a company that was focusing quite a lot on data and sort of more CRM analytics called ActionBase. And then I became the CEO of that Swedish entity after some short while. And since 2018 I have been group CEO of Avaus.
Cool. So now you group the whole thing?
Yes, from Stockholm.
So what would you say is the main difference working as the group CEO versus working on like a country manager? Is it a big difference or a small difference or main difference?
I think the big difference has been the interaction with the board and having sort of more the, let's say, business model and these more strategic questions on the table.
Your horizon needs to be a little bit longer now.
Yeah, exactly. But then, in a small consultancy, everybody is doing the sales, everybody is doing the delivery. So,
how
so
many
it's
people
not.
Are working now?
We're roughly 100 people. So we have been focusing quite a lot in the last years on. Well, in 2018, when I became the CEO. My vision was that we need to start focusing a lot more on data. So until then, we were more like a digital marketing and especially MarTech consultancy. We had a background in implementing a lot of marketing automation systems and sort of riding the wave of MarTech at the time.
And MarTech is
marketing technologies, especially email marketing, connecting your different channels together. And using data to do that, but often not using data in the way that we perhaps today mean.
Cool. And you've been there now for 12 years. So given this, more than a decade at Avaus.
Sounds horrible when you say that like that. More than a decade makes me quite old, I see.
We're both much older than you, so don't be afraid about that.
Yeah.
Anyway, what would you say the biggest shifts have been during these years in terms of what the company has done in MarTech in general?
Yeah.
Or what are the shifts you have seen?
Well, I think in 2012 there was a lot of focus on just basically going digital. So the reason that many companies like big insurance companies and electricity companies and furniture companies were going into marketing technologies overall was to send less post. Yeah. That was sort of the big driver, and especially after the financial crisis. And then you had almost a decade of a lot of focus on building digital channels. So improving your e-commerce capabilities, improving your website, building mobile apps, making sure you can do emails and that you're visible on Google and all of these sort of very channel focused things. And since the last 5 years, most organizations have that in place, and then the question becomes, how do you orchestrate all of this? And then the focus has shifted a lot more to data, and that's sort of the shift that we have done as well. That it's not enough that you have the ability to sell online or send emails or whatever it is. You have to have the ability to use data to make smart decisions and automate, and then of course apply AI to do those things at scale.
Do you think most companies today, would you say more than 50% that actually have digitalized their services today? Or what would you say, what's the ratio today, you would say?
No, I would say in the Nordics, the level of digitalization of the channels is very high. Then the level of data-drivenness is very low, extremely low. I think shockingly low,
so
and has sort of stayed there as well. Even though there's this realization that we should be able to do so much more, but why aren't we?
But I remember this quite vividly. I worked on the B2B side with these topics in Vattenfall from 2012 to 2015, 16, and then I moved into group. And it was like lead development, lead management, and then was marketing automation. And I remember strongly a conversation I had when I actually moved more and more into data in the group position. And I was then talking to the now leaders of this digital transformation in B2B and B2C of Vattenfall. And we're not going to go into which vendors we are talking about, but I was trying to...
I'm sure they were great.
Yeah, they were really great, but there was a very, very, very strong discussion on, we need to have all these channels, and even the word omni-channel, that we need to do omni-channel. And I was kind of pushing then. I was now the data innovation chairman, 2016, so this is about the same year. But, you can't do omni-channel if you're not really thinking about how we organize the data around this. No. And I remember vividly that I could not connect at that point in time with the marketing. Like the whole industry was really strong on the channel and omni-channel storytelling, but no one was doing the impact analysis. So we ended up building all these channels, and we are quite digitized here, but we are quite analog in how we are feeding this with data. Yeah,
exactly. Or you're sort of running your omni-channel channel setup the way that you would, run an analog, postal.
Yeah. So lift and shift.
So me and Anders had an ongoing argument joke. What is the difference with digitalization and digitizing? And so the point of digital transformation that you really reinvent things rather than you're lifting an analog process into a digital flavor. I mean, like you do email, you do something writing on hand, and now I write an email, but it's still a post you're sending. You haven't changed the process, so to speak.
Exactly.
And this is what I think happened with the omni-channel point of view, that we had we are now digitizing, we're sugarcoating the analog process with a digital approach. We're not reinventing the core idea of how we understand dialogue marketing.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of probably, there are many reasons, but one reason is how organizations are set up. Yeah. So there's one team who are in charge of the email channel, and then there's one team or an agency who is in charge of paid advertising, and then there's one team who has the app and the another team who has the e-commerce. And no way that those guys are gonna at least, if not forced or at least facilitated forcefully, gonna start, outsourcing the decisions to some other team who is running on data. No, but everybody wants to run their own, and if the KPIs are channel
this
specific,
is not even
it's
strange.
very difficult.
It's not even strange. Like you have an organizational mandate, and you are supposed to do digital transformation within that scope or within that mandate. So that to go and reinvent your business means reinventing the business model, reinventing the operating model. And as long as you're staying within the analog or the functional division of labor, that structure, you can only reach so far.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think it would be hard to go beyond that, because it's you don't have the mandate to do this.
Exactly.
You don't have
What do you think the proper way to do it is? I mean, if you start with the silos as you described, what's the next step?
I'm gonna don't quote me on this, but we had a very long discussion about this with a colleague of mine, because this is something we struggle with every day, and we see it in every organization. And the only organizations that we see are being quite successful have a very sort of non-Swedish leadership style. Mm-hmm. We jokingly talked about that we need sort of more or let's say less democratic leadership style for this to work, because there are so many voices and many people who also might want to protect their jobs or the mandate or the power or the teams that they have, that unless you have somebody who's really pointing with your whole hand saying, this is how we're going to start. Yeah. And I think in a way American companies have the benefit that somehow they are a bit more prone to lead like that, not maybe all the way like Elon Musk, but still the Swedish very consensus-driven way of making decisions and listening to everybody and so on is it makes it super hard, super duper hard.
The problem is if you don't have that pointing with the whole hand kind of leadership, then you stay in the same processes. Is that the reason?
You stay in the same processes, and of course you can do like a successful pilot, or you can do like a successful transformation of one channel, or maybe adding another channel because you're good friends with the team lead of the other channel, or you happen to be quite data driven yourself, or you can set up some small AI lab within your own small domain, but that will never scale. So it will be one of those great success stories, but you will never be able to say that, well, now our organization is data driven, or now we have taking a step towards AI driven business models or anything like that.
But I agree with this. This is real change, right? This is real organizational change. But the strong leadership, it starts there, but that won't be enough either, because in the end what we are talking about is to reimagine the team topology and the mandates and the way we are structuring things. Yeah. And if I go down the Derdax hat view, is like, as long as we have functional division of labor or into silos, the way we are thinking about process and not product, the way we are thinking about team topologies, you cannot fix it. So you need the strong leadership, but also you need to understand what is the future operating model then, and what is the organizational structures. And then there are many things we need to rethink, like the interface, what is tech roles, data roles, IT versus business roles. What
are the targets that you're running the organization against?
All this. Yeah. So the strong leadership is the starting point. But you cannot. For me, strong leadership is also that then you figure those things out and you make the required changes. It's not.
Can you give some example, perhaps, that like a good example of a company that actually made a big organizational change?
Well, I think a really great example is Viking Line, which is a company that we are happy to be working with, and they really have taken a strategic decision to be changing how they run their business with the help of data. And we're still early on in the journey, but sort of even realizing that this is going to take a long time. This is not implement a piece of technology or do a pilot and let's see how it rolls out. It's sort of the key thing here is realizing that if you want to be data-driven, omnichannel, you have to be very, very systematic. The key lies in sort of the boring stuff. You need to realize that there's going to be hundreds, if not thousands, of decisions or campaigns or processes that are going to be automated, which means that you have to produce these automated processes every day or every week or every month. And most organizations are not rigged in a way that they can do that, because they are rigged in making one-off campaigns or changing their pricing strategy a little bit based on this week's sales or next week's projections and so on. And I think the realization that the key lies in the systematic work process, and then forming, as you said, the team topologies. So the way that you work with the day, where you start your week, what's the first thing you do on Monday morning, sort of, because that's going to dictate how the rest of the week unfolds.
And I think the examples where people have come further is that it's not enough to do the high-level executive board PowerPoint.
No.
You need to continue peel the onion layer by layer. What does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean?
Yeah.
And then quite deep down you get to another operating model in terms of how we understand data and tech. And if we really understand it well, we do it right by design from the beginning. Yeah. We do data quality right by design. We do data structures right by design.
Exactly. And we do marketing strategies right by design.
By design. All of this, right? And then all of a sudden, it's almost like you have I've said it, we have like an innovation tax. So we can't cheat. We can't do the Excel way. We can't do the cheat. We need to do it a little bit more robust in order to have network or compounding effects over time.
Exactly.
And then
can we be a bit more concrete? I mean, we're saying a lot of platitudes here, I think. We want to be more systematic. We want to do it, in a more wholesome way. But to really try to define what are the key factors, what are really the way to be more customer data insight driven in some way.
Yeah. Well, I think use cases are that's the buzzword that you use, and everybody's talking about use cases, and that's actually it's the absolutely best way to connect. So use cases as the language between the business and the more technical or data-driven competences, I think is the way to start. But one of the things that we see going wrong quite often is you get these sort of management decks with 5 use cases created by one of the big consultancies, and then you're like, okay, let's choose one of these use cases and then let's make that work. And it took 2 years, and you have not achieved, the operating model where you can put 2 new use cases into production every week,
right?
And where your algorithm that you developed can be taken out in all of your channels, a week after it was productionized.
Can you give some example perhaps from Viking Line? If you find some use case there, or just make it really
well, I mean, for any company that is doing any type of sales to a B2C client, it's, how do you make them buy, at a higher rate? How do you make them buy more often? How do you make them buy sort of incrementally more than they would have otherwise? And a lot of
Finland's cruises, that's something I frequent myself a couple of times. But how do you get people, attracted to that?
Exactly. I mean, that's it's exactly the same with almost any type of company. How do we predict who we should sell to? How do we make sure that we predict who we shouldn't sell to, so we don't waste any marketing or sales on them, because then we can spend more on the ones who actually have high potential? And how do we take those predictions out in marketing campaigns so that we are offering you on the best possible cruise experience, or the best slugger, or the best the best band that's there, or the most relevant tax-free offering, and those are just things which are, every single passenger is going to have a different requirement. And you can't do that unless you automate, and you can't automate unless you let AI do the decisioning of what exact tax-free product are we going to offer you, which is going to be different then for me.
Yeah. Okay. So more driven on, you actually do collect data in a proper way. You do find some automated way to find the insights from that data, and then you base your decisions based on that in some way.
Exactly. And I mean, this is not the new AI stuff that everybody is excited about, but I mean, this is where most of the business value is. Yes. And then you come into, okay, how are we going to produce marketing content to sort of feed all of those campaigns, for instance? Well, then you have generative AI, and then you come into these. But those, you don't need those unless you have all of your basic data and sort of ML-driven decisions in place.
Should we go there already?
Yeah, I think so.
Because I think you said it very well. I mean, people are today so hung up on the generative AI and the latest type of AI, and you can, generate images, text, and audio in different ways. But there are so many traditional uses of AI and machine learning that you should not forget about, that are the corner of so many businesses still, right?
Yeah, and that are underutilized completely. There's sort of massive business potential to get there.
So I really want to make sure that we say that properly, because the next question would be, what would you see in coming years? What would potentially change in marketing in coming years, and the development we've seen in AI?
Can I rephrase that in a two-step question? Because I think there are new things coming into the game now that we could do, and we could switch our budgets and go bananas on this. But if I really take the pulse on where we are now, what would be the best stepwise approach to go into data-driven and machine learning-driven, in your opinion, from where we stand today? Not what can be done, but what is the biggest business impact that is more relevant? And actually, if you do that right, that is a stepping stone, maybe even to do the next thing right. Yeah. So a little bit like this. So what is the future now? But not giving that we are in the
super future, but
what is the future?
Next quarter,
what is the future giving where they stand? Yeah. That's my fine tuning.
Almost every company has the exact same exercise ahead of them. They need to first look at, what are the business drivers that we're trying to do in marketing and sales? Well, we typically want to sell more. If you're in a subscription business, you want to make sure that your existing customers aren't leaving, so you're managing churn. If you are in retail, you want to increase the basket size typically, and increase loyalty for your clients to come back. And it's a super basic, business 101 exercise to just prioritize it and calculate where do we have most to win.
I guess customer lifetime value is still a useful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Still
You know, and what are, you know, what's the lever that you're going to push to increase your customer lifetime value? In some cases, there are also a lot of cost reduction possibilities, especially if you are very, let's say, not data driven in your media spend, and if you have a very high sort of customer service frequency, so a lot of your customers are calling you, for example, and you're managing those calls, then you might have a lot of cost savings that you could do with the help of AI. But in most cases, sort of, it's still in the very basics. So selling more and sort of doing it in a more relevant way. And from there, you find the use cases, which probably is not going to be 1 or 2 or 5, it's probably going to be sort of 50 at least. And if you start there and look at what are the requirements, you're going to see that generative AI is not sort of in almost any of them. There might be like a need to maybe in the future start being able to auto-generate, you know, texts for your copy in your email, but it's not really a pressing requirement for any company right now.
But I think you nailed it when you say there are at least 50 to 100 use cases. So sometimes when you go to the board and you listen to this, you hear about what seems like 5 mega use cases. That's not how it works.
No.
It's a compounding effect. It may be a cluster of items that you can sort of put in different buckets. This is about churn.
Yeah, churn use cases, but there's like within that.
You know, let's talk about churn use cases. I used exactly this at Scania. No, Accenture didn't. That's not a use case, dear Accenture. It's a theme.
Yeah.
I used to.
It's a value driver.
It's a value driver. It's a lever. But now let's what way, you know, or like sales funnel marketing, like sales funnel. Like where in the sales funnel is it? Lead generation, lead qualification. What lever exactly? You know. Now we're on use cases level. So the first topic is you have 50 to 100, and you need to sort them out, and you need to understand that you really want to work with a lot of them. I think that's a profound first step to get there. Yeah,
and it's counterintuitive because in every senior business leader's mind, you know, you want to do heavy prioritization. You want to do 1 or 2, so that you can get ahead with your data project, or so that you know where to start, or, you know, eat the elephant in steps and so on. And since, again, the key solution to how you become data driven is figuring out how do you systematically develop use cases so that the time you need for each use case is dramatically shorter for every use case you do until you find sort of a equilibrium where you can't be any more effective. That's the key. And if you're not looking at 50 or 100, you're never going to do the stuff that scales. And you're going to, you know, one use case is going to take you 6 months and you're going to be super happy about that. And the project team is going to celebrate. And then, you know, you look at the list of 99 use cases and you have to do 6 months each.
I think what you're saying now is profound. And I think very few...
Thank you. I think so too.
No, but it's profound.
No, but this is where most are going wrong.
Yes.
It's counterintuitive to how we have done things.
Yeah, and I use similar rhetorics where I say the goalposts are moving so fast now. So what we need to do is we need to have a systemic approach. We need to build a muscle that can generate innovation and that can find it. And then we are talking back to innovation speed and the decision flow and innovation flow of putting use cases in production. Yeah. And then basically the best way to do that is start super small with a super simple thing and then understand how you scale that up or how you become very, very efficient in doing many use cases. Yeah. Because not until, this is your words, you take that mindset, do you get to the real problem of scale or do you get to the real problem of systemization of data?
Yeah, and if you don't, then you can never become data-driven.
No, you can never.
And perhaps that's a great segue to actually one of the articles you wrote.
Yeah.
Really, right? It was, what was it? Building a revenue engine, scaling up your sales automation.
Yeah, which is actually written with my father, which is great fun. He's been in the same domain as I, you know, talking about CRM in the 90s.
So you are Kai.
Yeah.
I read his books.
Oh, you
Some
did?
of them.
There you go. And
so
and
Kai Storbacka is famous, of course.
Don't you know him? It's quite niche, I would say.
I went in Australia. I went to this in the 90s, relationship marketing. This is before CRM, and then we flipped it to CRM. And Kai Storbacka and a couple of They were the godfathers of CRM or relationship marketing.
Yeah, that's
one-to-one
true.
marketing.
Yeah. Which is so interesting because back then you couldn't really do any of the one-to-one marketing because the technology was not there.
Right.
And then sort of today, what I'm doing and what we're doing at Avaus is, it's basically the same stuff. It's, nothing new.
So I went to university because I wanted to make a career in marketing, but not any career, a career in one-to-one marketing in the 90s.
You were a forerunner.
No, there was plenty of stuff. I worked at the company, we were working on this stuff, analytical CRM 2001, 2003, so it's been around, right?
Yeah.
SAS Institute was the
exactly.
technology we used for this stuff, Siebel a little bit, but
So for us
sales CRM nerds.
Can you explain what one-to-one marketing means?
So basically sort of starting your marketing strategy from your customers and looking at, again, customer lifetime value. How do we maximize the value of our customer base? How do we make our clients buy more, stay longer? And how do we spend...
Does that mean personalized marketing?
Well, it sort of has become a term that maybe means that, yes, you are getting personalized or relevant, at least, communication.
But the core idea when I understood this back in the 90s was basically, when do we stop using a shotgun approach, and then when do we use a sniper rifle approach, and then basically when do we start communicating mass, like it doesn't fit anyone, when do we make our communication more relevant, and then you can take that the whole way. How do I make a dialogue with the customer over the lifetime, rather than I send different things in different channels, and every time I send it to the customer, I start over again. So how can what I've done in one channel be in the brain of of us, so we can intelligently continue the conversation? So regardless of which channel, regardless of what we do, the customer experience not information from us, but a dialogue over time. So we introduced this in Vattenfall, right? So we have marketing campaigns. We want to send this campaign now. Who is right now calling into customer service and have a complaint? Okay, should we do a stupid campaign right now, or should we first do this campaign via the customer? Should we treat these cases differently?
Yeah.
Should we recognize the dialogue? Have you fixed it? Are you happy? Now I want to this campaign now. I want to offer you something because we had some problems.
Or, I'm a great customer. Should I be, getting a call or an SMS?
Yes.
Could be stuff like that as well. But so back to the question about the article. So we have always been, my father was in consultancy earlier, but has been in academia since the last 20 years and more actively, more only on the academic side. And we've always joked that we should write a paper together. And then finally we got the chance because a journal reached out and asked about if we could write together on this topic of sort of data-driven CRM, AI, So we put together an article, and which I think it's very short. So if you want to put it in the show notes or something, it's quite managerial. But it's also talking about a concept which we use at Avaus quite a lot, which is data algo action, which is a way to sort of describe a use case. So we realized some 5 years ago that our customers don't understand this use case concept. So how do we sort of make them understand that what does this machine, the automated data-driven machine.
When you say customer, by the way, you mean
the client, the client organization.
Yes.
And we came up with this data algo action, which is really fun because now, for example, recently I just saw a Salesforce pitch, and they had used this. They had data insight and activation or something like that, but basically the same setup. And we started making sort of recipes that, okay, so what data do you have? What insight or algo or AI do you want to derive from the data? And then what automated action should this connect to? And when you apply that in a workshop setting, for example, business people tend to have an easier time understanding what will this actually mean when it's data-driven, but they can also have, it's sort of a great facilitative tool between, again, business and the data teams who don't speak the same language. So it's sort of a translator between two teams who don't have a common language.
So you have like a procedure basically to describe use cases, and that way, by using this kind of procedure in workshops, etc., you can scale up the number of use cases that you can handle in some way, or
I think it's more a tool for change management. And I think that's the biggest aha moments that we've seen, that when we give the language, like this is how you can talk to each other. Because then when the business guys can go, well, in the action, I would like to have an automated, personalized ad campaign going out. Right. And then the data guy could be, well, okay, so we have this and this data here. And then, together they can find that we would like to have it personalized based on propensity to buy or
and that
AI
leads
predictions.
To change management in terms of they want to create cross-functional teams.
Perhaps, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And quite often we see, cross-functional teams in themselves are great, but they need tools. They need sort of. Otherwise, you're going to waste again, the 6 months on talking about a use case, and you still have not really quite understood what that use case is and what it requires. And this is sort of a tool to, again, speed up that process. And we have,
No, but the cross-functional team is the first stepping stone. But then you need to find your language, your socio-techniques. You need to find how can we act as a team and not as ping-pongs between different disciplines in a room.
Exactly. And then if you take the example of the sort of 100 use cases or the 50 use cases even, and you've described them all on this level, and you give that to a data team, then they're going to be, we actually need to build this data table or whatever, warehouse in a way that it scales, because otherwise we're going to have to do this ad hoc thing 50 times. But usually, if you give the business, if the data team tends to tell the business that, hey, please come up with requirements. And they go, well, my requirement today is that I want to, drive this Facebook campaign, and I need this one data point. Okay, thank you.
And which leads to, which leads to all these cobbled roads of ETLs for each small little case.
Exactly.
So one of the key things when you show them what this is really about, then you can take a step back. How do I then set the data foundation up?
Yeah, and then you can have a much more meaningful discussion about, technology choices or architectures or
So you need to think about like a 50 to 100 use cases approach, and then build solutions that support this kind of large scale. And it can't be manual steps in figuring out what data and actions to take and every part.
Exactly. Typically when we start an initiative, we agree on a target automation level, as we call it, which is basically sort of how many automation should there be in how long time. And typically the number is more, I think, north of 300 maybe for a not very advanced normal company, which is not super data driven.
300 what? Can you just elaborate?
Well, if you think about an average B2C or B2B company, but let's use B2C. Let's use Viking Line. So you have probably 10 different channels where you want to activate the data. And then you have...
activate the data or the users? Or
activate the data sort of towards the end customer or towards your internal users as well. But if you think about these data algo action use cases, it sort of really quickly multiplies. And making this work in app, mobile, Google ads, meta ads, email, e-commerce, all of those require effort. And if you think about this as sort of, okay, we're going to have maybe 20 core use cases. So there might be 3 for churn, and there might be 5 for upselling and cross-selling, and all of these are going to be activated in all of these channels, and they are all going to require data from maybe 5 to 10 source systems. The automation level, is the combined amount of automated flows that you need to have in place, and each of them you have to build at some point. And then when you say, okay, so we're going to have these 300 automated processes in place in 3 years from now. And then you calculate back, okay, that means 100 needs to happen every year. And then you go and ask their data team that how many automated flows do you have today? And how many do you think you could do in a month if you really tried? Then you sort of, again, come into this change management question of, okay, we actually probably need to change quite a lot in how we work if we want to sort of ever achieve this sort of first step of data driven.
There's another rhetoric around this that I think is another way to look at what you are talking about. I used the word Shunkamui innovation guru said, think big, start small, scale fast. And in data, we sometimes say, think big, start local, start with one very specific use case with a very clear persona or channel, and then scale from there. And the whole idea, if you don't ask the think big, if you forget that step, you will never get out of point solution land.
Exactly.
So this has something to do with understanding platform and understanding data and understanding that data is, as you said, there are actually 5 source systems, not more, but the cobweb of the multiplication of path this data needs to take. So if you treat each of them as use cases, as point solutions, it is you cannot maintain 300 flows in an easy way, in a maintainable way.
And I think that's where most organizations are stuck.
So when we say 300 use cases, it's not about starting 300 use cases big program. No. It's about the mindset of thinking big in order to understand, when I start now with the first one, where does this needs to go? Yeah. Otherwise, you'd get stuck with the point solutions. And I think the best metric
that I never see is time spent per use case.
Right.
From the first piece of paper to production.
Yeah, I love it.
Productionized.
I love it.
And if you, first of all, if you don't measure that, then you have a problem. And if that's not, really going down clearly, every use case you do, or every 10 use case you productionize, then you're not doing it right, and it's not going to scale.
It sounds like a bit like agile management of marketing use cases in some way.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, agile processes need to be in place then to run the teams and do the But I think agile has become, I think, a bit problematic, because in some cases you have this. If you're sort of going full agile, you don't have this dictator at the top saying, now we're going to do this and we're not going to come up with a lot of other things. Sometimes we see, at least from my personal experience, that agile becomes sort of a scapegoat. That we are super agile and we're actually shipping something every 2 weeks, and that's great. But it might not be sort of a use case from that list of 100. It might be some other stuff that came up, and you're sort of running really fast, but not getting anywhere.
I'm a bit
so
surprised.
Agile plus strong leadership, then you have sort of the.
I mean, sometimes if you think top-down kind of management is also frowned upon quite a bit, saying, if the top management team that have no idea how data is really being produced or whatever, then you will have a suboptimal kind of process, and you should have agile team that are autonomous, and they should be able to drive what they do. But you're saying something interesting here, which is there should still be some kind of direction, right?
Yeah, and I think the management should say that these are the 100 use cases, and they need to be in place in 2 years or 3 years or whatever. Because if they only say that, come up with good use cases, then you're very easily, falling into the trap of doing one at a time and then you have these sort of point solutions. So they need to set the sort of target automation level. They need to set the timeline and the effort allowed, so that there is sort of pressure to get these scalable solutions. Because otherwise you might just be asking for more resources and sort of not creating a more efficient engine at the same time. And then the last thing is that they need to be, sort of the business case needs to be connected to the top management. So they say that, well, yes, we will invest in becoming data-driven, and it will create us, 5% incremental margin in 3 years.
Yeah, the problem otherwise, if you have too much top-down, is basically micromanagement, right? And I guess you have to find this kind of balance there in saying, okay, you can't think like small single use cases. You need to find like a way to scale to a large number of use cases, but still in some way leave.
Yeah, all of the how you're supposed to do it, and what. And leave also room for failure and for a few use cases will not be good. That's how it should be.
But I think here, Anders, when we discuss what we're talking about now, agile, I think there's a huge difference in understanding this. If you lived in a true data native company or in a software centric company like Platarion or Spotify or any startup, compared to the bastardization of agile, I would argue that has happened in enterprise. So So in enterprise, I argue that agile was hijacked, and we have misunderstood agile as a product methodology, and we have flipped it into a project methodology. So first of all, we don't understand what the fuck we're doing because we are treating it as another project. We have props, we have prints, and now we have agile. It's not project, it's product, step one. So it's wrong from the start. Secondly, what's wrong in enterprise is the normal line operation P&L setup of how you run initiatives, what is line operation budget versus initiative, it goes up, it still is the old way. Now you're trying to, without changing that, you're trying to now say we are agile, sugarcoating this at the bottom. And it ends up in a really, in my opinion, dysfunctional setup. So it's not about throwing out the baby with the bathwater here. Yeah. So it's about understanding how do you do agile in an organization where the fundamental organizational steering is an anti-pattern to agile? Should you even try it? Or do you need to go to a product-centric type of organization in order to succeed with agile? So, and now we come to the next rant. We have the agile safe frameworks, where we go from the manifesto and the ideas, what is great with agile, to an industry that makes money of selling shit to big enterprises that are dumb, and then basically they can certify the whole company into agile safe, and it's fantastic, but they haven't changed anything. So this was a rant, by the way, and it was my personal rant.
Safe has their issues, so to speak.
Yeah. So when we are talking about the problem with agile, I 100% agree with you, but it needs to be a nuanced conversation.
Yeah, and I think sort of any organization running on agile, where you can show super clear business targets and whether you are reaching them or not, then you don't have a problem. But in most cases, at least there tends to be it becomes quite easy that your targets become so small that you're celebrating things that you shouldn't be celebrating, sort of, and you lose sight of really making big impact. That's my view.
We had Henrik Nieberg here on the pod, right? And they talked about when they were setting this up in Spotify, and then we had Oscar Ståhl on the Data Innovation Summit. He was the former CTO, and now he's leading the personalization stuff in Spotify. So I had the chance to talk with him at Data Innovation Summit, and Henrik said it really well here. The amazing stuff with Spotify is that they started figuring out a business culture from scratch based on agile. They are super, super early into the Agile Manifesto stuff, way earlier than Agile Safe existed and all this. And so an amazing environment. I mean, you grew up in this environment, so you have such a different understanding for Agile, in my opinion.
I've been in other companies as well. So
but you have been in companies, in my opinion, that gets this. And now you now maybe in the current places you are in the position where you can shape this the way it should be. Whereas I've been in enterprises where this has been, we need to go agile, but there are other things we need to fix to go agile.
And actually the way that we organize ourselves and what we call that and so on, it doesn't really matter, and that's not the point. The point is that how you organize yourself and how people interact with each other, that is sort of the hard part.
Yes.
The tech stuff is not the hard part. The data stuff is not the hard part. The marketing stuff is not the hard part. It's making these complicated creatures called humans interact in a way that is meaningful.
Humans are so difficult.
Yeah, why don't
we should have only AI agents, and this would be so much easier.
Let's go.
Yes. Awesome.
New topic.
Yeah, no joke.
That's awesome.
Would you rather have a colleague who is an AI agent?
This was a rabbit hole. I like this rabbit hole.
Yes. Okay, but perhaps it is a good segue to another topic, which more speaks about perhaps a modern business compared to traditional kind of enterprise style. But if you think about perhaps the role of consultancies in general now.
I love this topic,
Yes, so moving a bit away from marketing, but still the role of consultancy in general from in business settings for modern enterprises. What do you think has changed, especially given the technology advances we've seen in digitalization and AI, in terms of how consultancies can work with modern businesses?
I think yet there is to be seen sort of the big change, but with AI making sort of consultancies able to scale their deliveries in a completely different way, I believe, are going to see a completely different business model start to take place in consultancy, where value-based or outcome-based work is going to be the standard. So especially if you look in sort of the data and tech space, the way that you buy consultants today is that you buy them on the hour, and then you look at the CV, and then you're like, well, this guy seems nice, and then you speak to them, and then you agree to hire that person for a year and put them into your agile teams, which is, has been working quite well because there's been scarcity of talent, and it's been a way to source hours, basically. But now that companies, consultancies of every kind, or service companies of any kind, are able to sort of automate a lot of their work and make it less dependent on the human hour, that means that, of course, why would you buy hours if somebody could just press a button somewhere and deliver the code or the advice or the legal document or the PowerPoint deck or the business case. So I think that's the big shift that consultancy as an industry is facing, and I'm quite excited about that, because it means that you have to start creating value, and that's what you're going to get paid for.
I think it's interesting both for consultancies and for the
buyer as well.
For the buyer, right?
Yeah, because you're buying a lot of shit, but you just don't know what who is going to have a good ROI, like which consultant is going to. How could you even measure that today?
Can we give some example? If Viking Line were to, from Avaus, buy some service, how could they make that value-based? Okay.
Well, Viking Line is a good example. I think Tom, who's the CDO in a webinar, also spoke about this, that we actually have a value-based agreement with them. It's not 100% value-based, but it's a step towards that direction, which basically means that we've given a discount, and then we get to earn it back with some extra if we deliver the business results that we have agreed on.
Okay, I see.
So it's sort of a step towards that direction, and I think it's working wonderfully, both in the change management perspective and also to get our team to work as hard as possible, and to sort of.
So if you deliver, is it on time as well, or is it?
Yeah, it's in this case we have 3 different factors. So we have the number of use cases, so the target automation level, are we sort of on time with that? And then there's the revenue uplift. So are we doing the right use cases? Okay. Are we prioritizing the right ones that actually will have an impact on this year's margin? And then the last part is change management and general happiness. So it's a survey-based in a way metric.
Oh, interesting.
And I think that's the direction we're going to have to go, because you also always have in consultancy this problem of, do you want to create results, or do you want to befriend your client organization? So if you're solving complex questions,
painful,
then you might need to challenge the client in how they have decided to organize themselves, what type of data structures they have in place, if they have the right competence, if they are helpful enough in, are they showing up in meet, whatever it might be. And if that person that you need to challenge is the one who's going to say, are we going to continue with this consultant next year or not, you're quite likely not to actually be
as clear and tough as you should be.
Yeah, and we often get the feedback that we are a bit too harsh, that we are sort of making things complex or bringing up the things that are hard, and that's, for me, I'm very value oriented, so I want to make sure that we're delivering the absolute best and that no client is wasting money. But sometimes I think, and I've learned recently also, that just need to allow that, because sometimes you just don't want to be challenged, and that's a hard sort of balance. But what we've noticed is that if we have this commonly agreed incentive, then all of that political discussion sort of fades away a bit, because all of a sudden we have the same target
the
and
same goal is
yeah.
super important if you can reach that.
Yeah,
with
because normally with the consultancy and the client relationship, you don't have the same goal. The consultancy wants to increase billability and for things to take long time.
There are many extremes where you have set up contracts which actually, when you start looking into them, they drive tickets or they drive some like an outsourcing setup, which really drives the wrong behavior.
Yeah.
So setting the metrics or setting the goal structures and then incentivizing that, I think that is one of the most important how we can be better buyers of consulting.
Exactly. But so with Viking, one example is that we have agreed on, I think, can't remember the exact numbers, but this year we should have a use case development speed which is twice the speed of last year, for instance.
That's fantastic.
Perfect.
And if we don't, then we don't get back the discount that we gave.
But okay.
So then we have to build things in a scalable way from the start.
We have the upphandling or the procurement process. If that could use these kind of metrics instead, that would be so much
because
better.
This is exactly where I wanted to go now, Anders, because what you're talking about is the future of consulting, where it needs to be. But how much is this a buyer's problem or a consulting industry problem? Because I find there is a spectrum here of what I found here, and I hear a fantastic, very mature buying competence.
Yes.
And if I'm taking the extreme now, and we all know it, so we don't need to be sensitive about it. The buying competence, if I go to public sector in relation to data and AI, we know this is a fundamental problem. We don't know how to buy. We have tried to use LOU and we have frameworks, and I don't think maybe necessarily even there is wrong with the framework, because if you look into them, you can use them smartly. But the buying competence, I find a lot that in the end, value-based, that is great. I have had this conversation. In the end,
it never works.
But in the end, what did they want to buy? Time and material, because their processes and the procurement was measured on, I could squeeze the price per consultant hour,
Exactly.
So here we have a major gap, in my opinion, in buying competence that is sort of, to some degree, dictating where the whole consultant industry is changing.
And it's not only about consultancy industry. I mean, the same thing goes within the organizations themselves. So if you have a budget for a data team, how do you set the targets there so that the data team has the incentive to automate away themselves? That's I think the big question in society in general. Like, how do you incentivize people to get rid of
right things,
the stuff that shouldn't be done by humans anymore? Oh my God.
It's time for AI News, brought to you by AIAW Podcast.
Yes, so we have this kind of middle break in the middle of the podcast where we speak about some interesting news that happens every week, and this week has been an exceptional week, I think, for many reasons, for some news items. And then we get back to the discussion with you, Emma.
If we remember where we started, my
of course.
maternity leave brain might be somewhere completely different.
Thank you.
Is it a good sign that this was the first time that you used any of those?
But speaking of that, each one of us can talk about some article. I think we will all choose the same ones, but still, Emma, perhaps if you want to start, do you have some news that you would like to speak about?
Well, of course, the two big announcement days this week has been the all over LinkedIn and the web. But from a digital marketing perspective, especially generative AI coming into search by Google, I mean, it is reshuffling a lot of the truths in SEO and digital marketing. Not that it's completely new. I mean, it's just an amplification of what has already been in the works and more focus on quality content, for example, and less on sort of technically just getting clickbait into your site to sort of rise up in the rankings and so on. But we're all the time going into this direction where digital marketers need to be super on their feet all the time.
But unpack this. What are you concretely seeing now? You're saying stuff here now that actually leads down a different trajectory on how you do SEO, or is even SEO relevant or something like that. Yeah. So go a little bit deeper on your thought process that's kicked off from this announcement, and what you were basing it on, what you saw, and then what you took out of it, or where you were going with it?
So now SEO is not my sort of. I don't have the deepest knowledge in this area, but of course in our field we are working next to a lot of digital marketers and experts in sort of the Google search space. And 10 years ago it was all about defining keywords and sort of bidding on the right types of keywords and stuff like this. And already for some time Google has been limiting your ability to as a human design the strategies. So it's more broad based, I want to sell to these kind of customers, optimize everything else. Google announced Performance Max, which is, creating ads automatically. You just dump pictures and some links and they will create all of the ads for you, and you just sort of sit and wait and give a thumbs up.
This is super important business. This is 90+% of the revenue that Google has.
Absolutely.
So then having this kind of change into the search engine business
it's massive.
It changes the world. I mean, how many times do you still Google every day? I haven't turned into only using ChatGPT. I mean, Google, small things, big things all the time. And now what they will start doing is sort of, you can start asking more complicated questions from Google. Like, I think they had a demo on, what's the best yoga studio within 4 blocks from where I live that also serve vegan tea or something like this, and that starts kind of creating more intelligence into the answers, and you can't manipulate anymore the Google sort of search ranking in the same way
or
that
pay
you
for it even perhaps.
Yeah, exactly.
But how do you think about that business then, going into these kind of generative search experiences?
I mean, I think it's as relevant as before. It's just different things that you need to do well in many cases. So many of the paid search agencies need to be much better at managing data, because whoever pushes the best data into the search sort of the bidding engine wins. And if you don't have good data, then you are sort of losing out.
But I know I want to test. My understanding is, so we have a lot of, we have the organic search, or the natural, like the people who have good content, blah, 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 comes high up on the organic search. And you have paid advertising, and you can do that. My take on this is that content becomes more important.
Yeah, even more than before.
Even more. Yeah. And as a marketeer,
different types of content and quality and depth. So
it becomes like, okay, I need to start doing more articles. We need to start doing playbooks. We need to start doing this and this and this. And even how much I need to worry about how I tag the keywords is less relevant, because they will read the whole thing and get the semantic understanding of it. And it's more about, so do you think that's a key implication here?
Quality of content and the modality of content. So another change that they announced was that there will be, today if you want to use Google to find different people's opinions about stuff, that's not very easy. Like, how would you find, the main influencers in your domain's, latest views on a certain topic by Googling? That's very difficult. So that's one of the changes that they brought, that you can have, can't remember what it was called, but you can sort of press a filter and then you will get all of the latest sort of social media and forum posts about a certain topic, which then makes you as a marketer, you have to focus on even a broader set of content and channels, which again amplifies the need for content, which is the hardest part of any marketing organization today. Luckily, we have generative AI to help in producing that, but it's going to be interesting to see how marketers, are we going to then have like just
if you take OpenAI, they actually recently did this announcement with Financial Times, I believe it was. So they announced a partnership saying that when OpenAI and ChatGPT produce an answer, they will actually have a proper reference to Financial Times if some kind of content is coming from one of their articles. And I guess the same can be done for basically any kind of retailer or whatnot, that if some material is being used from that, they should have a proper reference to them.
Yeah.
And that could be a way to lead and get marketing back to different sites.
Absolutely. So I mean, the same logic applies, that if you're creating good content, Google will use that, and users will sort of land in your domain eventually.
Yeah. It's just it won't be as quantitative, or like before you had so many ads, it wasn't really connected to what's really wanted. Now it will be more connected, but also less links, I guess.
Probably less links, and probably you won't be able to trick the algorithm as you have been able to. You know, there's so many bad.
Will have a really bad.
No, I hope so. And I mean, all of these changes are great for the individual consumer. I mean, it's fantastic.
Yes, right.
How would you summarize like the technical perspective of the Google announcement?
The Google one or OpenAI?
Start with used to close the Google announcement. What is the tech angle on that announcement, if you would take?
I mean, OpenAI did this kind of one big thing, and Google did a large number of things. And I think, the difference here is that Google really has a large number of products that they can, integrate and engineer all these kind of changes into. Like Gemini now, it's part of search now, of course, which we spoke about, the generative experience, and that has improved significantly. So just having this kind of generative experience in Google search is one thing that really improved with the announcement yesterday or Tuesday, I guess.
Yeah.
But they did so many more things,
Let's go there a little bit.
Yeah, so they had the Astra thing, and this is similar to what OpenAI had. So it's like a voice chat. You can have your phone, you can like point it to something, and you can say, you are in the corner of Hötorget and Sveavägen, and basically have integrated with Google Maps probably, so they can see exactly where you are, and it can also point it. I think they had an example where they pointed it to a speaker and could say, this top part of the speaker, what does it do? It's the one that actually do the high frequency kind of audio. So basically you can use the phone to go around and just get information about, what does this thing in my surrounding mean? And it's really impressive, I think. It's not as fast as at OpenAI, but it really moves into the whole area of getting multimodality, understanding images and videos. So basically Astra, I think, understanding video with a mobile phone and just ask it anything is impressive. Then, of course, they had the traditional stuff. VO, I think, was another thing where they basically had video generation, which apparently is similar to Sora. Sora was the big OpenAI thing before, and now I'm not sure which is the best one. I think Sora potentially still is one of the best, but at least they did significant improvements in the ability to generate videos, not only images, but videos, so to speak. And so many, they had a big TPU version 6 now called Trillium, I believe it was, and it's 50% less energy consumption and 5 times faster. They had the Gemini, integrated in all the products, Gemini in Google Photos, in Gmail. They had like Ask with videos or something, and so many different things. But
let me take the lead on the next one, and then you fill in the same way, because here a little bit like, okay, Google did one big announcement that you highlighted, and then there was a ton of different areas that they did an announcement.
I watched the 10-minute summary, and it was impossible for them to get everything into 10 minutes because there was.
So if you contrast that to Steve Jobs' classical launch of the iPhone, no, it was 5-10 things. Okay, so let's contrast that now with the other big announcement from ChatGPT, GPT-4o, Omni, and the way I want to sort of go into that topic is simply, I saw one. There was one video that went absolutely viral in Sweden, and that was when he was sitting with the GPT-4o, and he was basically sitting with his kid, and he was trying to do a math problem, a geometry problem, trying to figure out, teach the kid what is the adjacent side, what is the geometry of a triangle, blah blah blah, and then in an absolutely beautiful way, there is a pedagogical conversation unfolding between the child and the model, and I was sitting there, meaning having goosebumps, and in Sweden, the general sort of it went red, like hundreds of comments, and it started off like okay, this really, we need to wake up in our education system, because this is what we need in different ways in order to, have a, and then so many beautiful comments around like, okay, we need the teachers, and the teachers should work in this way, and then they can give the AI to the different children, so that we can have one-to-one tutoring all the time, and then we can oversee this. And there were so many great ideas, and then was the frustration about this. But but hugely impactful and really hit the normal person deep. Anyone who has children with problems in school was hit deep. So
or just don't have time to help with the homework.
No, all this.
They don't need to have problems for that to be.
But I think also it's important to say that it's not really the scientific breakthroughs here. It's not really they have
no, it's the use
art.
cases.
Closer.
It's the user experience. So it's some problem with the mic here. Sure, if that's
no, it's better.
Okay. Anyway, it's a problem with it wasn't really the scientific breakthrough that was the thing. And I get annoyed when I see people saying, GPT-4o wasn't really a big thing. Yes, it was. It's just that it was the engineering part of it, the user experience with especially the low latency that you have.
Exactly.
It's like 200 millisecond response time instead of like 4-5 second response time. So this was the big breakthrough, and it is important, and it is really impressive. So I think it is a really impressive thing when you actually think about the user experience and not these kind of scientific breakthroughs.
But this is a really good analogy. Anyone who's watched the Spotify Netflix series, or anyone who really was there in Spotify, one of the key things that Daniel Ek was obsessing with, we learn, is like how fast can you go? What's the latency problem when you compare to Napster or whatever Pirate Bay you were doing or whatever was there? It was clunky. And here now you had really old songs and there was no latency. And that whole user experience meant, okay, that changed music streaming forever. And the core, one of the core differentiators was that latency experience. So don't take that, and that is hard. This is technically hard as well.
It is hard, and then it was a lot of other changes as well. But I think one of the biggest one from a user experience point of view was the latency. But another big change from a more technical point of view was instead of traditional kind of voice chat pipelines, which usually take an image or a video, translate it into text, then you do the text generation, and then you go back from text to speech in some way. That takes a lot of time. That's why the traditional kind of models take like 4 or 5 seconds to do. But in this case, it can do it in 200 milliseconds. Seamless. And the really big change and improvement here is not only the latency, but it doesn't lose all the information that you have. When I look at Henrik, when he speaks, I can see on his face, or I can hear from the audio that he speaks, that now he's happy, or now he's really angry. And all these kind of emotions is something now that this model can understand. And it can not only understand, it can actually generate as well. So in these kind of demos that you heard from OpenAI, you can ask the model to be even more happy or show more emotions or show less emotion or speak in a robotic voice. And it can even understand things that has nothing to do with the actual text, what you say. It's how you say it, not what you say. That type of new information from the body language and not the textual language is something that wasn't possible to understand before. I want to say, though, that this is actually how Gemini was starting before.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, like, what's your take then on like who is at the front and who which one is going to get better?
So I think in this case, OpenAI was actually inspired by Gemini because when they announced it, the first even 1.0 was from the start created from a multimodal perspective, but they didn't nail the whole user experience part of it. And even today with the latest launch, they haven't as good user experience as OpenAI has. So they were inspired from it, but they engineered it even better than Google could.
But I think this also highlights, and I saw an interview with Sam Altman on it. We need to progress on the model itself. Yes. Okay, but it's so many other things in order to make it a seamless system that is, at some point in time, this is not a model question, it's a user experience question, it is a latency question. There are these different facets that in the end, imagine the opposite. We had an even better model now, but the latency is shit, and the modality is shit. So I think I'm very impressed with how OpenAI, as still a fairly small company, are balancing their priorities between focusing on the model or focusing on the experience. I think they're doing this really well.
I completely agree, but I have to say that I'm happy that Google is catching up.
Yes,
I mean, they have not
for
been,
sure.
because my life has been revolving around Google, you know, as long as I've been an adult, and I've always been sort of pouring all of my data, all of my photos, all of my, you know, my life is in Google.
So
and
you're
the
just
more
waiting for them
to come back with all of these things that are going to make my life even more easy.
Yeah. But I think Google had other upsides than OpenAI had. So OpenAI had a really good user experience for this single use case of the ChatGPT 4.0. But what Google did, which takes even more time and even more money, is to integrate it into their products.
Exactly. And how are you ever going to get the OpenAI stuff into your, like,
Yes.
I'm not going to use new apps.
But, Microsoft will try to do it, but of course they haven't done it yet. But Google has. They have integrated into Google Search. That takes an immense amount of work.
And
they have integrated into Gmail. That takes an immense amount of work. They have integrated into Google Photos.
Which is my favorite.
and this should be really appreciated.
And
so the amount of work and money they have spent is so much more than OpenAI. And I don't think people recognize this properly.
No, this is so good, Anders, because we talked about this even here. We talked about this on the stage in Data Innovation Summit. One thing is the model, but how you build a compound, the end-to-end system or ecosystem around it is really the big work. So it's a little bit like at some point we will wake up and then Google will be way ahead again because they're actually doing the hard work as they go right now.
Yeah, and I think still, Google has a big upside long term because, for one, they had the best compute, the new Trillium TPU, which is much cheaper. They are not locked into NVIDIA dominance and the extreme prices that they have.
Could we say something more about that? Because we use browse. That is very big too.
Yeah. So TPUs, it's a tensor processing unit. It's an alternative to GPUs, and Google build them themselves. Every kind of large company, even Microsoft now, is starting to get away from the dominance and dependency on NVIDIA, that otherwise is the 90+% market lead in having advanced chips.
So what was the TPU announcement, or what was
so it's version 6.
Version 6 of TPU.
So they have a new version. It's five times faster and 50% less energy consumption with it.
And when we say that they are building TPUs, they are building the actual chip. They're building the hardware, hardcore.
Through TSMC.
TSMC underneath.
Yes.
But they're competing with NVIDIA. Is that?
But
they don't have to buy NVIDIA GPUs.
No.
But do they sell them also to?
No.
It's only for Google.
Yes.
So they do it for themselves, but it means that they are not part of the GPU shortage as the rest of the world is.
So this is a big thing.
This is a big deal.
They don't have to spend as much money on it because they're less dependent on it. But I think every big tech giant, even Meta now, is building their own chips. So they want to get away from the big dominance and dependency that you have on NVIDIA.
And then again, all of those three or four or five tech companies are going to be way ahead of all the rest of us.
All the rest.
Even more so, going forward.
Right. Should we now we have talked about 2 different brands and their announcements. We had a couple of more. Do you want to browse through them a little bit, Anders? Because there was a couple of cool ones.
Yeah, well, I love that.
But do them short.
So Anthropic, is an alternative to OpenAI. It has some ex-employees of both OpenAI and Google started a startup called Anthropic, and they had a new service called Claude, or model called Claude. It wasn't available in Europe. We have all the GDPR kind of problems here, but now it is. So they launched in Europe, and I think that's a big thing, and I'm very happy to have that.
What a bad week to launch.
Yes, it is.
That's a horrible way to launch.
Who did the PR planning for that?
That is a very good point. Should I mention that? OpenAI did the announcement on Monday, and that was very, very calculated. They knew that Google were going to launch on Tuesday, so they preset, their launch on Monday to completely offset Google's announcement.
And Anthropic and Cloud just got lost.
Yes,
they thought that this is the week that you're supposed to
Oh
announce.
my God.
Now, but you can imagine all the, industry espionage going on here, and the marketing, plans that they have. You know, we have to plan the day before they do the big announcement. The Google I/O is happening.
What was the major thing with
But
the
who won? Like, what's your
OpenAI.
you guys?
OpenAI.
for sure in the
Yes.
terms
So.
of the viral
virality
view,
of
the
the
virality,
demos,
virality.
But I have to say, one other thing that they do really smartly from a marketer perspective is that when they launch anything and then you go into their website, you can download all of their videos from the demos.
So easy.
Which means that you can upload them as your original content on LinkedIn or
and
wherever,
then
and
the
then it gets
viral
much more
spinning.
Yeah, so I think that's
beautiful,
like just
super smart.
small
Very
detail,
simple.
but it just makes it.
But just a few, like very small, and then we can stop. But I think another one was that AlphaFold version 3 now came out, and AlphaFold is one of the biggest like scientific inventions that have been done in recent times. And AlphaFold 2 before was basically trying to create a 3D structure of proteins, but now they can do it for DNA molecules. So they open up an insane amount of new research opportunities and abilities to solve different diseases.
Who's behind AlphaFold?
It's DeepMind or Google. Yeah.
So Google.
So that I think is a big thing, but it got completely lost. And
AlphaFold 3. We remember a couple of years back how big the AlphaFold the announcement was not big, but the impact, and we started talking about it even in general media, and this was of course close to COVID and all that, and we now know sort of the way we got to vaccines in that record-breaking time is all about AI and AlphaFold and these kind of things. Yeah. And here now we open up the whole field of DNA. It is as a scientific breakthrough, that has implications in many disciplines. It is absolutely huge.
It can be a lot of progress going forward in drug discovery, so it can be a big impact on the future of healthcare. And no one is talking about it.
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to say that. Thank you for informing me.
I want to organize my Google life. That's more important than
exactly.
saving humanity.
My photos, I can now
my
find
photos are more important
all
than
of my dogs.
But speaking about also music, like Spotify, etc. I mean, another big thing was 11 Labs. They have been really awesome in being able to generate a voice. So you can just take a text and then you can make it sound like any person through their nice APIs. Now they can generate songs. So this was superseding now the Udio. Udio was another service that came up recently, where you can basically from a text prompt say, create a song like this, and it has the lyrics, it has the voice.
That's the stuff that's been going around LinkedIn a lot. People making,
and it does, and it sounds awesome. And 11 Labs just did this, but GPT-4o can do it better. And so I mean, 11 Labs completely dropped everything. The whole news story got lost, of course.
Yeah,
it's I don't know, OpenAI's marketing campaign.
They're brilliant.
They have
Fantastic.
some brilliant person there.
But also, but I think from a marketing point of view, what we talked about here is not only about how the launch. It's about the little things that you then make the content available, and it helps the whole thing go viral, and then the whole brilliant sharpness in timing. And they have now done it a couple of times where they flip the date. And because the strategic importance of the date, they are recognizing this and they're acting on it. Fantastic. Really good work.
That's agility.
Agility, yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Interesting week.
Big week.
Big
for
week.
Sure. Okay, should we go back? The time is flying away here, but perhaps we could move a bit more into the future and go a bit more philosophical and see, if you look at the future trends and perhaps if you were to give some advice for, I guess, different leaders in industry, and of course in marketing, sales or services in general, what should a company like Vattenfall or other enterprises or a startup do to be able to do the marketing of the future? Simple question.
Yeah, simple question. Let me just ask my friend ChatGPT. No.
Yeah, we should.
I think it. The field of marketing has been under change and digital transformation, forever. And things move much slower than you would think. That's my big takeaway. That we're always, 5 years ahead. I was just talking to an industry colleague, and we had a great discussion about first-party data and the use of first-party data, which means that you are actually not using sort of the data that Facebook and Google are collecting, but actually about the data from your own customers to optimize your media campaigns. Makes a lot of sense, for example, that you aren't marketing to those who are already your Vattenfall customers. And 5 years ago, we were both saying that this is going to be, this is huge, and this is, everybody needs to do this, and it's technically super simple, so why aren't more companies doing this? And now we met up for a stroller walk in the sun, and both realized that, 5 years later, it's still like a massively good business case, and still very few companies are doing it. and we both sort of just...
The goal is sitting right at home.
It's sort of, the money is on the table. You can just go and make money, and you aren't doing it. So the question of, what's the future-proof marketing organization like, or how do you, what's the future trends? I mean, the trend is use the damn data.
Use the damn data.
That should be another T-shirt.
That's another T-shirt. Yeah. Use the damn data. Just use it. We can have a swoosh log. Just use it.
Exactly.
Emma says, use the damn data.
Use the damn data.
So somehow I think, it's not anything more fancy than that.
Yeah, but it is, because if you unpack use the damn data, then you get to, okay, our architectural structures, our back-end stuff, our organization is not geared to using data, it's geared to develop applications or build applications. So when you say data-centric, I mean, like we are moving from an application-centric approach, and this is, I think, is a big difference if I go to Spotify or Klarna, who is seen themselves as a data-centric company, versus going to an enterprise that is an analog enterprise that has an IT that is good at building applications or configuring and implementing applications.
And a marketing organization that's good at marketing products, not managing customer relationships.
Maybe.
But the beauty, I think, is that customer centricity requires data centricity.
They go hand in hand.
So in a way, the future is customer and data centric. In order for the future to be customer centric, you have to be data centric. Everybody wants to be data centric, which will unleash the potential to be customer centric. So
and the core topic,
my hope for the future is that these, either one is going to happen, and that's going to trigger the other one.
But then I think the future marketing organization cannot look at data as a byproduct.
No.
They cannot look at data as something that comes out of the application. They need to look at the data first, understanding the business use case of the data, and then choose the tech from there.
Exactly. Yeah, and the tech is sort of the least of the problem. So the data is in the center, and then you have strategies and business targets around that, and then everything else follows. But that's a huge shift. That's really hard to do.
But let me
for a marketing organization especially, it's transformative in a way where marketing organizations and marketing leaders and sales leaders, they are not typically transformational leaders. Like a CDO has probably done a transformation or two already, running in their enterprise. They have come in and, bought new technologies and gotten the budget to do a transformation and done, invested in change management and gotten people to use whatever new tools and systems. But in marketing and sales, you haven't really, carried that type of responsibility in most cases.
But let's now dissect if customer centricity is equal data centricity, or they go hand in hand, is the current marketing organization geared with the competences around data then? Because if I look at this topic now, we have marketing competence, we have maybe customer competence, customer centricity, but do we have the data competence within the organization of marketing to understand this as one? I mean, like, what I'm going for here is like we have a split between business competences in marketing versus the tech competences we give to the app, or we outsource to someone else, we give to IT. And all of a sudden now we have this unhealthy interface, I would argue, between people who understands data and tech and people who understands what to use it for.
Yeah.
And so if you go in that direction, what is the organizational impact of this future you're describing?
Yeah, but of course, the marketing organization needs to have a data team or data owner or a sort of, however, or data partner. I think quite often it's not even a good idea. There's been a lot of in-housing, but what we also see is that it's quite dangerous to in-house the data capability, because that's, if you get that wrong, or if you are very dependent on one or two people, or if they are not sort of progressing fast enough, it's a risky bet to have somebody who happens to be good at Google Analytics sort of owning your data agenda in marketing. So really taking this seriously and setting sort of pretty high standards for what the marketing and customer data or sales data is going to be. Because I think that's like the number one critical thing.
In my argument here is that if you look at this on enterprise scale, we need to get tech and data roles into many different domains in relation to what they're doing. And then we don't want all of these different domains to, siloed do their thing.
No, there needs to be like a governance.
So then all of a sudden now we get to a topic how we understand data in a broader sense than marketing and sales. And we need to have the difference between people who are working on it really broadly in the enterprise versus the one who knows the stuff around the data, particularly for one domain.
Couldn't we phrase it like you need to have like a data strategy in some way?
Yeah.
Saying that, you
like
shouldn't, you said before, you shouldn't just use data from applications. And that got me thinking about one example. This was from Andrew Ng, I believe, and he was working at Baidu, the Chinese tech giant. And they said, they're launching a new product, and people were looking at them and said, you have no business model for that product. Why are you launching this product? You're spending so much time building something and letting users use it for free. Why would you ever build such a product? And he simply said, we want the data. Because we're building the product not for the purpose of making a profit directly, but from having the data so we can make profit from other things.
And the beautiful thing and the bad thing about data is that you can't generate it 3 years from now or 5 years from now. And that's where, if you are only, again, myopically looking at the use case of today, you don't get the realization that, okay, we're going to, the way to win the game in insurance is to be able to do personalized insurances based on your health data. Well, you can't get the historical health data later on if you haven't started to ask for it today or connected it to some business.
What do you think about personalized insurance data?
Well, it was a bad example because it's a horrible sort of future.
It's a tricky one.
Sort of dystopian view.
Do you think it should be regularized or have some kind of regulation around it too?
I think that's a broader question, and I think that goes into the sort of whole what does society look like 50 or 100 years from now, where I guess insurance and health data is a really key topic. Like how can we make sure that people aren't discriminated on
if the car insurance is based on whatever, or your dental insurance or health insurance is based on some kind of. And
I have to say, I mean, if we are allowed to be a bit philosophical, and now this might be like one of those rabbit holes, but when it comes to sort of the future, I'm a very sort of optimistic person. I always see only the benefits of all new technologies, and I'm sort of happily dumping all of my data to Google, for example, since forever, because I only trust that they will do my life better. But recently, more and more sort of the societal impact of not sort of me dumping my data to Google, but sort of what will society look like when data-driven businesses start to be the ones who are surviving. And where do we stand with equality and will we start to have different types of societal sectors who aren't able to access, for example, healthcare of certain those topics are.
It's easy to discriminate, if you use data in a poor way, and this I think is something that we need to regulate properly.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it can be.
But then, are we going to be able? My trust in our ability to do good legislation. That's it's a topic for another talk. Maybe.
But before we get too philosophical,
that's a good thing about marketing. It's sort of nobody will.
But actually, before we get too philosophical, I want to a little bit circle back to Anders' overarching question. What can we think about predict about the future of marketing? And I think there's one way to explore that question by understanding what's the future of MarTech. And as a summary, when we prepared for this pod, I was sort of laying out that there's a couple of different stories. If you're going to buy MarkTech, if you're going to buy, I want to be data driven, and you said it, you're in the middle of the forest, and you can take many different paths, and there is a couple of different storytelling paths from the vendors today. So we have the big vendors of data and AI tech, the generic stuff like the Azures, the Googles, the AWS, and then you can add on the Snowflakes, the Databricks, that are sort of, you can use them ubiquitously for any domain, right? And then you move more clearly into the MarkTech domain. And here we have a storytelling that comes from the CRM vendors, the Salesforces or the Microsoft Dynamics of the world, who started in the sales side. And then you can go into Marketo and HubSpot, and you can start from the marketing automation angle, and sort of, you start here and you build your ecosystem from here.
And then you have Adobe with the sort of
and then
creative, starting from the creative angle.
You started from the creative, and then you have the whole CDP, customer data platform lingo. Like there's another storytelling going out there. And then I picked up, so customer data platform, marketing automation, sales CRM, generic. And then we have the last one, which I think is quite interesting, like Henrik Larsson Broman, when he did the research on all different AI tech that is available for sales and marketing. We have millions of different types of apps that helps with different narrow use cases. So it's almost like you can find an app for every single marketing use case, like the lead development or the marketing or the writing your content or yada, yada, yada. And you move, So painting the picture of a MarkTech vendor space,
it's horrible.
But what do we predict? Which one will survive? Where should I put my bet? Or what is happening here? What do we think?
I think sort of one thing that has been happening for the last 10 years is that there's a totally new buyer group, which is marketing, which starts to spend money on software, and the problems that they are solving are quite small, often like use case based problems. So there's an industry sort of serving those needs. What you will find, I think, in 10 years from now is that all leading companies have focused on putting their core data into shape with these cloud providers. So it doesn't really matter which one it is.
But this is more the hardcore.
That's where you should have. That's where your data should live, and anybody saying anything else will be very sorry after a couple of years trying to force yourself into a CDP or something else. And then those small apps, you should build your data foundation in a way that you can add any app you want, but also remove it if you want.
Yes.
And unless you do that, you are kind of putting yourself into a situation where a lot of your business and your revenue is dependent on a certain software.
But I agree with you, because you're now talking about the data foundation that maybe even needs data to go beyond the marketing domain. Exactly. The marketing data is used somewhere else, or I take a Scania example.
Or the customer, let's call it customer data, because it's not only marketing who wants to know
but it's the
who is our customer and are they profitable. I mean, the CFO would want to use that data as well.
If I take the Scania example, we have data around the truck, we have data around their payments of their loan, and then in the end we have marketing over here, right? And in order to do marketing, in order to do pay, or at least
relevant
marketing, you might even need to know the product data, what trucks they are driving in relation to the customer profile. And all of a sudden now we're talking then logically about a data foundation that needs to go beyond marketing. Absolutely. Then we can look at how we stitch a larger or smaller apps on top of that.
Exactly. So I think that's the harsh truth, and maybe marketers are quite easy to sell software to, because many of these tools promise to solve all of your problems, and any tool that promises to solve all of your problems with very little work, or drag and drop interfaces, or whatever it is that sounds and looks great, it's not going to be that.
I have to ask ChatGPT 4.0, what is the future of the market industry? You want to hear the answer?
Yes. Well, I would like to add one thing, and then let's see if he or she is
of the same. Change?
Because one thing I think when it comes to the marketing industry, if we really look at it from the broad sense, I think the marketing industry is one of few industries that are really, really challenged by generative AI.
Yeah.
So the creative industry, let's put it the traditional marketing industry.
Yes.
And that's where a really big job shift is going to happen. It's not about losing a lot. There's going to be a lot of work in marketing, but a lot of the work that is currently today being done by marketers will not be done by humans.
Should I change the question, or should I go for this?
There's
one?
two different
Depends
questions.
depends on the answer.
Okay. I'll start with this one. It's
That's
many 12 different points here, but let me start. Okay, AI was number one. So AI and machine learning. AI and machine learning will continue to transform marketing by enabling more personalized and data-driven strategies. Predictive analytics, customer segmentation, and chatbots are just a few applications, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that was one. Data privacy and security. Increasing concerns over data privacy and regulations such as GDPR and CCPA. Blah, blah. Okay. Omnichannel marketing.
Oh.
There it is. 10 years later. 20 years later.
Weird. Content marketing and storytelling. Okay. So this is, I guess, where generative AI comes in a bit.
And the generative search. I mean, that's exactly
And the content becomes super important, and we need to do content at scale, and then we get to generative AI.
Yeah.
Then influencer and affiliate marketing.
That I think is very interesting. I mean, influencer marketing it's something that's easily dismissed as a bit silly or because I mean it's not technical by nature. It's not. But when you sort of put influencer marketing and the impact that it has, because it has a much higher emotional impact and it's much more authentic. But if you combine that with technology, and if you combine that with targeting and personalization capabilities, you combine that with generative AI, so you have these avatars or sort of synthetic influencers. It's a force to reckon with that I think, for example, in B2B, it's completely greenfield. Nobody's doing influencer marketing in B2B, or very few.
And I think maybe this is another next generation marketing. We started with omni-channel, but we haven't really reached omni-channel in the sense of network or compounding effects.
No.
So we are using many multi-channel. I give omni-channel not so sure. Not so much, right? So it goes the same now. Multimodal AI, but it also goes multimodal in terms of different marketing approaches. It's not as simple as channel. It's how you get a flywheel effect from some type of traditional marketing, some type of content marketing, some type of social media marketing that strengthens the flywheel effect.
And where AI, I think, makes this interesting is that most marketing organizations, they can't handle more than one or two channels.
No.
They cannot handle, creating content and strategies and managing partners and technology. It just becomes too much. And if you apply sort of the Google Performance Max thinking, that you just like dump use this type of influencer persona, use these USPs, and here are the target clients that we would like to have revenue from 2 years from now. Go and do stuff. But that type of marketing, we haven't seen that yet, but that's where we're going. Because if you take the Performance Max and sort of scale it to something that's not only search ads or sort of display.
But this is super deep what you said now. We had Cassie Kusorko on stage in Data Innovation Summit, and we've talked about it here, like what happens when we get AIs in. Will it change the world? Will we feel different? No, we will simply only work on a higher abstraction level, because the operational stuff that sort of consumes us that we never get out of. So the way to think about this is that we as marketeers need to move up strategically in one abstraction level, and then thinking the right way, and then the execution of that thinking we can leave to the AI. And Cassie had the difference between thinking and thonking.
Yeah, I listened to that episode.
It's quite fun, good, right? Yeah. So what she's describing now, we need to do the thinking. We need marketeers to continue to do the better thinking, the more strategic thinking, the more flywheel thinking.
But then in order to do that, we need someone else to do the thonking. And it makes total sense to go in this direction.
And I think a really classic example that I would say is true for most e-commerce companies, for instance.
Yeah.
And the way that they manage their own channels, so their website and their email sendouts, which are usually a really important channel, is that they're so busy sending weekly campaign letters. And maybe if they're quite advanced, they actually make 2 or 3 different weekly, but manually creating emails, that they cannot find the time to make something that would go out on a personalized level, at the right time to the right client, because they're so busy sending these, thonking those emails every week. So absolutely with you and with Cassie on that.
Do we see the same trajectory in B2B, B2C, and direct to consumer, or do we think this marketing? Because there's arguments about, there's so big difference between D2C and B2B, and then someone says, no, it's not. You need to understand customer centricity and blah blah blah.
Yeah,
so
I think there is a huge difference.
Yeah, and is it a huge difference? Or is it different trajectories?
Yeah, it's just different applications of AI, for example. So, for most distributed B2B companies that are selling in local markets with local marketers, the biggest problem is that you can't make enough localized content. Simple question of language and
bandwidth in the local market.
Exactly. So then your generative AI application is going to be there. Then for e-commerce that has 10,000 SKUs, it's about the personalization of can we be relevant in what we send out, and do we know your next best action or offer or something.
So the use case trajectories are quite different.
Exactly. You're going to apply data and AI and automation technologies for different things, but the way that you apply it and the systematic, and the customer centric way of running your marketing, that is sort of a common truth.
It's a common truth, but there's different headaches.
Different headaches, very good way to put it.
Awesome. And time is flying away, and perhaps we should move to the final and standard question. So Emma, if you believe that AGI will happen, do you believe that AGI will come, by the way?
I guess it's a question of definition. I believe that AI will have a significant impact on our society.
If you take AGI definition, the artificial general intelligence definition, as Sam Altman saying, when AI will be as good as your average coworker, human coworker, then we have AGI.
Yeah, well, then I think we're there pretty much.
Really?
Not maybe, but then it's not. Then it's close.
But
if you have this
Henrik to go and do some shopping, I couldn't ask any AI to do that. So I think it's a lot of stuff that you can do small parts of a task, but not really
the whole thing. Yeah,
right.
It's the whole thing problem we have, right?
Yeah, this more like dystopic singularity scenario where kind of in a second, the AGI has emptied all of the stock markets and started to reproduce.
The paperclip.
Yeah, this thing. I don't think that will happen. I don't believe in that, but I do believe that
Do you think it will be a time in less than 10 years where the AI system will be better in any and all tasks, including playing soccer against the human champions?
No, not within 10 years.
Good.
Within 50, maybe.
If you remove the robotic part of it and just think cognitive tasks.
Cognitive tasks, then within 10.
Yeah, good. Okay,
good.
What do you think?
Was it the correct answer?
2027, you're sticking with that, right?
No, that's Sam Altman. No, sorry, that's Elon Musk. But I think it's paraphrasing his thing as well. I don't think he says AGI at 27.
But it's the original. It's not Sam.
No, you're thinking Ray Kurzweil in 29.
29, I was thinking.
But Elon Musk has said 27 as well.
Okay, so are you sticking with 29?
Yes.
You're sticking with Kurzweil.
Yes. But Elon Musk, I think they are paraphrasing him as usual.
Yeah, they are. They're stealing it, by the way.
Yes. Anyway, at whatever time, we will potentially have a cognitive AGI or a physical AGI. What kind of world will it create? Will it be this kind of either like extreme dystopian nightmare, a la Terminator or a Matrix, where machines will kill the humans? Or will it be the opposite, the other extreme of a utopian future where we will live in a paradise where we have abundance of all products and goods, all the diseases are cured, and energy is available for free.
And I have to pick either or.
No, it's a spectrum. It's a spectrum.
Yeah, it's a spectrum.
How do you see the spectrum? Where on the spectrum are you?
As said, I'm an optimist, so I sort of want to believe that AI and technological development is good and will take humanity sort of to a better place. But how we are gonna solve all of the societal questions, that's my sort of bigger fear. That how are we gonna, with our democratic election system, how are we gonna elect the right people to make the right decisions?
Biden or Trump? That's good.
Exactly, and sort of that's where my worry is, not in the technological development, that technology would sort of become bad. It's more kind of our ability to...
Humans is a problem.
The humans are the problem.
I think Alex Norén, SVT, said it the best. So why we all need to care about data and AI, because it is what we make it out to be.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's up to us, and that's why we need to care and understand it in all the different levels and facets.
And in a way, the best thing that could happen is sort of an AI-aware populist leader, maybe pointing with the whole hand in a good direction.
So populist in a good sense.
Yeah.
What do you mean populist in that sense?
Somebody who wins elections.
Okay.
Let's put it
like
that way.
A politician in some way that is AI aware and used for
and
being data driven or factual in some way.
Yeah, I mean, if
but we have France as a fairly good example now, where I think we are having the leader in France fairly. He seems to have embraced stuff, and he seems to doing some really good moves for France right now in terms of helping the French AI community, and by that I think because he cares about
to go
this.
into politics here.
It's interesting, but I mean, like, so I don't know enough about the details, and I haven't followed it, but I can just follow from the. Observing high level what's going on. They're making moves that seems to be working.
Yeah.
But I've
been reading three-body problem now in the last months.
Explain.
Chaos theory.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it's been quite interesting. I can highly recommend reading the book over seeing or I haven't seen the Netflix version yet, but it's a
give a short background.
It's about a alien society that are finding out that Earth exists and then coming to get us, basically. But the interesting thing is that it spans over several centuries, and I think the interesting part is not the space stuff and the alien stuff, but the way that they describe how humanity works. How sort of after a while all of humanity thinks that, well, of course they're going to be nice to us. And then, nobody wants to invest any sort of political power into, for example, defense systems. And then, they turn out to be bad guys. And then, that we as a human race are so irrational and so these things happen, we can change our opinion about something in a decade and
I think people should be much more humble about the limitations of the human brain.
Yeah,
our
exactly.
humans' capability. It's very limited, and it's so easy to see.
And group think, all of a sudden everybody thinks something is good or something, and how 100 years is a very short time, actually.
It is from an historic point of view. But Emma, you said you're an optimist. So if you were to just place yourself on the spectrum from dystopian to utopian future when AGI exists, where would you approximately land?
Well, I would be maybe sort of, if 100 is utopian, then I would be maybe at 75.
75.
I
would agree. That's
maybe it's wishful thinking, but
that's the right thinking.
Where would you end up, Henrik, by the way? I don't think we have asked you the question properly.
No, I don't think this is a tech problem. I think it's a societal, organizational problem. And when I mean that, I mean from geopolitics all the way down to the company and the individual. And based on that, I put us on the 50. I am a little bit cynical in relation to how slow we are even to move on very basic stuff in our organizations, on very obvious things we need to fix and change. And what would shift the scale has nothing with tech for me to do. It has more to do with
getting
You don't think
innovation.
AGI will have a big influence on that?
I don't think the AGI can really work until we are organized and ready for it to work. I mean, like if you take the AGI and you push it.
Paperclip
If you take AGI and put it into, let's start next level. We go to agent.
But just assume AGI exists in a fully like cognitive and physical sense. Do you think then it will have an impact on society?
The simple answer it depends on. Sorry,
Consultant answer.
it depends on if the organization. I like it. Thank you. No, whether that is on the positive scale or the negative scale, when you have AGI, it depends on how we were able to organize self and lead this. So it's all in the hands of what we do with it.
In your defense a bit, I think also similar to what Sam Altman says about this, it's a question of the hard takeoff versus a slow improvement. And humanity is surprisingly adaptable. And if it is a slow takeoff, that it's basically continuous kind of improvement in artificial intelligence, then hopefully we will adapt. And it will not be a big like disruption happening at a single day when someone pushes a button. And that I certainly agree with. So if it happens at a not too fast rate, then I think it will be hopefully very good.
But couldn't you also think that if the change is too slow,
Too far.
The mic.
Sorry, if the change is too slow, will we make the societal changes needed?
Yeah,
like
we should, right? We should be able to, shouldn't we?
But I think it's the other way around. That unless something sort of drastic happens, we're not gonna be shaken out of whatever the election topics are in the US right now, losing jobs. So in some
someone said this really well. We need to get quite close to fucking up.
Yeah, well, that's maybe not the AGI moment, but some sort of fuck up moment.
We want a massive fuck up as a wake up call in order to start getting urgency around this.
And maybe actually somebody should produce that.
So this is why, but this is cynical stuff we are talking about now. But when you're pushing me, the way I answered the question, where on the scale am I? I think we have moved this direction with several guests, and I think we will reach AGI, and I think we will incrementally increase society, and I think at each step of the time we have just got to another abstraction level of problems. So as humans, we will feel more or less the same. We will, so when we talk about AGI, will we recognize the moment? Or will we, I guess we kind of passed it 10 years ago, but we've been moving the goalpost for what we define as AGI the whole time. So I think it's going to creep up on us. I mean, it's a little bit like e-commerce. E-commerce existed in the internet bubble, but it was fucking nothing, right? And now all of a sudden we're living in e-commerce in 2024. Could you define the moment? Was there a pivotal moment for e-commerce?
I guess it could be a slow boiling the frog problem as well, that we don't recognize that, someone else is actually controlling us.
Yeah.
And then suddenly one day we wake up and see, oh shit, we are so dependent on this, we cannot really get away from it, and we can never remove it because we are so dependent on it.
And is this then on the middle of the scale or negative or positive? I'm not sure if it's negative even.
To lose control?
So what define lose control? Do you have control? Do we have control of the economical global market today? Do we have control of the global economical market today?
No,
I don't think we have.
Nor can we lose our dependency on electricity, for example.
Do we have control over the electricity?
Yes, I would say we do. We have cognitive control over electricity, but I don't think potentially we will have cognitive control over.
Do we have cognitive control over the economical market in the world?
Probably not.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Can we get out of it? No. Can we fix it? No. We can use muddle through and do it better. But do we have cognitive steering and control of the whole global economic market?
But it is different still when something has higher cognitive skills than us.
This is true.
Because
this is true.
The economic markets, we can still control it if we have the cognitive upper hand. But once we lose the upper hand in cognitive skills,
we are not losing it. Yeah, it's a different story because we have not. We cannot cognitively grasp it as a whole, so we can only tweak it and see what happens, right? But here we're talking about the different story when something else has more cognitive.
And once you can do the bootstrapping problem, where an AI system can improve itself, that can be really dangerous, because then it can move so fast, and then we certainly lose control. And that is basically the singularity.
Yeah, but this is the fast takeoff scenario.
No, it's more the singularity that Kurzweil says.
Okay.
2045, basically.
Wow.
Okay, I think we need some more after work discussions to finish this topic. Emma, it has been a true pleasure to have you here. I hope you can stay on for a short while at least.
We know you have a. What were you saying? You have 4 hours, whereas 2 hours sleep and 2 hours crying.
Yeah, screaming. It's been a pleasure. Great to be invited.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And it's over.
Ooh.